All right, hey guys, it's Luke, and I promised you guys a couple responses. The first one, I'm going to talk about the treadmill running, and I'm going to go over, I'm going to actually just read an article from March of this year. It's from Alex Hutchinson, and it's written for Outside Magazine. Many of you know him from his book Endure, his other one, Cardio, well, which come first? Cardio or versus weights, something like that. So anyway, he's got some great information. Looking it over some different things on treadmill running, and then I'll give in my 2 cents on it at the end. So, and then I promised another video about returning, building up from your recovery, your race recovery plan, and we'll get to that one next time. So, how treadmill running differs from running outside. And so the second biggest question about treadmills, besides whether an airplane can take off from one, is how well they approximate the experience of running outdoors. Some runners swear it's easier to click off miles on a moving rubber belt for reasons including the lack of air resistance and the somewhat bizarre idea that you can just hop up and down while the belt whizzes by underneath you. Others, equally adamant, claim that the treadmill miles are actually harder, perhaps because they're stabbing themselves in the face with a fork to relieve the boredom. Not an uncommon scene, right? A new systematic review in the Journal of Sports Medicine from an international team of researchers led by Joel Fuller of Macquarie University in Australia tries to resolve the debate by pooling the results of 34 different studies with a total of 468 participants in which treadmill and what researchers call overground running are compared. The bird's eye view of the results is that running is running. There's no secret trick to treadmill running that allows you to spend half the energy you'd spend on the same pace outdoors, and if it feels like that's the case, then it probably means that your treadmill belt is uncalibrated, which is not all uncommon. But when you zoom in, the picture is a little bit more complicated. The good news is that during typical running at a moderate effort, heart rate, oxygen, and perceived effort are all pretty similar on the treadmill and over ground. Lactate levels, however, were a little lower on the treadmill, but that finding was based on a smaller number of studies and is more error-prone measurement, so I treat that with caution. The more interesting detail is that preferred running speed, that is, the speed that people choose when you simply tell them to run at a self-selected pace, was lower on the treadmill. This may simply reflect the fact that most people are less familiar with treadmill running and are a bit cautious about the risk of falling off or getting thrown off the back. One of the weaknesses of the study in the review, and the authors point this out, is that very few assessed how much treadmill running experience the subjects had at all. It's possible that treadmill vets would have no difference in their natural preferred pace, indoors or out. The most obvious difference between treadmill and outdoor running is the lack of air resistance. Back in 1996, Jones and Jonathan Doust published a paper that compared the oxygen consumption of running outdoors or on a treadmill at various inclines. Running on a flat treadmill burned about 4% less energy, but that difference could be eliminated by setting the treadmill incline to 1%. Since then, many studies have used the 1% grade by default. The study has been cited by more than 600 times. One problem with this approach is that the air resistance depends on how fast you're going. If you're running really fast, the resistance takes a bigger toll, which means that a really fast treadmill running is artificially easy by a larger amount. Conversely, when you're running really slowly, the air resistance is almost irrelevant, and the 1% correction is best for speeds around 7 minutes per mile. If you're running at 9 minutes per mile, you'd be better off at 0.5%. For the most part, the new data on energy consumption lines up with this picture. The faster you go, the bigger the advantage the treadmill gives you. But surprisingly, the picture changes when you look at heart rate and perceived effort. Both of those were higher on the treadmill at faster, but not all-out speeds compared to running over ground. And on the surface, that makes no sense. Less air resistance means you burn less energy at fast treadmill speeds. So why should heart rate and effort be higher? The answer to this riddle may once again come down to comfort, and the author suggests. It can be a little scary to really hammer out fast speeds on a treadmill despite the lower energy consumption. The lack of comfort with higher speed treadmill running might cause greater increases in heart rate and perceived effort due to feelings of anxiety and falling. It is also possible that the lack of air resistance becomes a liability when you're really working hard because you don't have the moving air to cool you down. There's a similar disconnect when you look at the maximal and near maximal treadmill running. In this case, the max values of energy consumption and heart rate are pretty much equal on a treadmill versus over ground, But actual performance, how fast you can go in a time trial or how long you last in a time to exhaustion test, is worse on a treadmill. Again, it probably comes down to familiarity and comfort rather than subtle differences in physiological variables. And when you put this all together, the sense I'm left with is that the biggest differences between treadmill and outdoor running isn't how you run, but rather how you respond to the experience. It's probably true that people run slightly different on treadmills. When you look at the detail at biomechanics, you can find subtle differences in things like knee angles and peak ground forces. But the overall pattern, as one such study concluded, is that the movements are close enough that you don't have to worry about the differences as long as the belt is properly calibrated and not too soft. So if you want to run on a treadmill, be my guest. It's not my cup of tea, but there are plenty of great runners who have sworn by it. My favorite example is probably Christine Clark, the treadmill-trained Alaskan who emerged from the boreal winter of the 2000 Olympic marathon trials in South Carolina. If you do, don't worry too much about whether a 7-minute treadmill mile equates to a 6:55 or a 7:05 outside. Just run, get suitably tired, and repeat. And the pace, when you get back outside, will take care of itself. So that's his opinion. And I, for the most part, I agree with the vast majority of that. I mean, it's probably not my cup of tea either, but it's a godsend in the winter for us here. And it can be even the summer, because if you get a day where it's just so hot, you can do something inside. So I am personally okay with the treadmill, and I think it's an important thing to have access to, right? And especially a good quality treadmill. And for most of you who are training really hard, a $500-600 treadmill, that's probably gonna beat you up. And I wouldn't trust the belt, and I wouldn't trust that it's going to withstand any significant amount of training on it. I can tell, I have athletes who live in New England, and it seems like they're getting a new treadmill every couple of years. And I had one guy finally broke down, and he's like, we added up how much he'd spend in treadmills over the course of the last 5 or so years, and he could have just bought a really nice Woodway. So that's what he did now. And he's like, and it comes with a lifetime guarantee. But it's not a conversation for that. But basically saying you're gonna have to get really good equipment, or go to a gym with good equipment. And I've actually looked at buying refurbished gym equipment. Companies will buy treadmills and things when companies are either exchanging out or they're going under, and they'll buy them from these gyms, refurbish them, sell them with a warranty on them, and you can get a good quality commercial treadmill that's a $10,000-15,000 treadmill that you can get for a fraction of that cost. It's going to take a beating, and it's going to go year after year after year. So that might be something to consider. I would strongly consider a foot pod if you're going to be doing any significant amount of training indoors. It's going to be much more accurate, because if you go by your watch, which is going by your treadmill, those things are all, and none of those are actually calibrated properly. It's going to be inaccurate, and it can be really far off. So I would invest $50 for a foot pod, maybe up to $100. Get a good foot pod, sync it with your watch, and then you're going to take care of that problem, and you know exactly what you're doing. We also have the calculator on our site, the treadmill calculator. It's probably not, it's not 100%, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be 100%, but you can actually kind of calculate what an effort would be when you adjust the speed and the incline variables, right? And so that's what I'll do with a lot of people is, because you feel the faster you run, the more likely you feel like you're going to fall off the back of that thing. And so what I will do with athletes is we'll kind of adjust the grade a little bit, and then that means we can slow the speed down, and we can meet in the middle to get what the desired effort is. And that's what a lot of it is on the treadmill. You're just going to have to trust that the effort is there, and trust that I'm getting a hard workout in and things like that. So do you need to be on the treadmill every day? No, but it can be a good break, especially if you get a long stretch of really tough winter, or a long stretch of really tough heat. And it can be a nice break from that. I try not to do everything on the treadmill, but if a lot of times when I'm doing doubles, I'll do my shorter second run on the treadmill just to kind of save a little bit. Workouts, if it's really bad out, I'd rather get the intensity in on the treadmill, but it depends on what it is too, and that's when it's important to work with your coach or with your club or whoever you're working with. But I personally don't mind the treadmill when it gets really nasty out, and I don't think it's going to hurt you at all, but you just have to plan accordingly to what the variables being thrown at you are. So speed and grade, maybe invest in a foot pod, and make sure you're trying to get on a good quality treadmill, and that should be good for you. So that's my opinion. Hope that helps. All right, talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.